Hello, my name is Bussy David, and you're welcome to Life Stories with Bussy. Today's story: my sugar daddy ran away with my daughter. Shocking, right? Quite surprising. Let's go into the meat of the story. My name is Adeobi, and I'm from the East. My father is late, and my mother was a struggling farmer. I was sent to stay with my uncle and his wife in Lagos, but my uncle's wife only treated me like a slave. The moment I left secondary school, I left their house. I stayed with one lady who was from the same village. The lady in question relocated and left me a room since our tenancy hadn't expired. I started doing different jobs: factory jobs, office assistant, ushering job, while still trying to get a degree in Yaba Tech. I started working in one office and as an office assistant. It was just four of us: my boss, the receptionist, the accountant, and I. My boss, Mr. Kunle Alabi, was a very good-looking man. He had a bit of grace. I wasn't quite sure how old he was, but from what people in the office said, they said he was in his mid-50s. He didn't look it. From the office grapevine, he wasn't married, and he was in big money from what I heard. They said our office was one of the smallest businesses that he had, and the accountant always whispered how much money the business was making. They said he threw a lot of parties and he knew very important people, even up to governors and ministers and all. It was very nice to us, and he always gave us money every weekend. He had given me money so many times. One day, he left the office late, and all of us had to wait for him to leave. My other colleagues stay in the same area, and so they had to leave while I stayed in another different area. My boss saw me walking down the road towards the bus stop, and he asked if he could give me a ride. Initially, I was shy. He was the only one in the car. Eventually, when I thought about how much transport fare would be and how I had to wait at the bus stop for a long time, I jumped into his car. He asked if I didn't mind that he had some places to go to before he could drop me at home, but that he was going to my area. I said it was fine, that I would just stay. When we got in, he started asking me a lot of questions. He wanted to know about my family. He wanted to know whether I had a boyfriend. He wanted to know about my future plans and all that. I told him everything. He made a few stops and dropped me at home. It became a regular thing he would do for me every Friday. Eventually, he offered me a better accommodation and offered to pay my school fees. I was so excited. He gave me money and told a lovely lady who he referred to as his cousin to take me shopping. The lady told me that her name was Annie, that everybody called her Annie. I started calling her Annie because Annie was in her 40s, and I referred to her as Auntie Annie. Annie wanted to know if I liked her cousin, my boss. Her questions were very awkward. She wanted to know if I was a virgin, if I liked her cousin. She told me that her cousin, that is my boss, really likes me, but didn't want to scare me away by asking me such questions. I could understand. I was just 18 and he was in his 50s. I could easily have passed for his child. I bet he was my father's age mate. It was exciting to know that my boss liked me. Later, my boss told me that he liked me and he did not want you to look as if he was taking advantage of him. I told him I liked him too, and that was how our romance started. He told me he had been married before, but he was separated from his wife, but they had 3 children and they all lived abroad. Kule, my boss, said it was difficult for him to get someone who really loved him for him and not his money. I declared my undying love for him. At this time, he stopped me working in my office and gave me a lot of money. He demanded that we should both go for a health check in the hospital. He said he wanted me to know he was coming to my life with a clean slate. The test result confirmed that we were both fine and no diseases could be passed. We started to sleep together. And when I raised his not using protection, he said he didn't enjoy it. He said that was why he took me to the test, so that we could be free with ourselves and not be afraid of contracting any disease. 2 months after our relationship started, I took in, and Kule assured me that he was happy and would take care of us. I told him I wanted my mom to know. He said we shouldn't tell my mom at this point because his divorce wasn't final, and that if the court knew that he was seeing another person or involved another woman, he would be in more trouble. Kunle assured me that we would do our traditional marriage when his divorce was final. I believed him. He gave me money to send to my mother. When I told him my mother wanted to visit, he said we would plan it, but that we should wait as both of us will be traveling, and when we come back, we'll invite my mother. Just about that time, Auntie Annie, his cousin, was pregnant too. We would share notes and all. We registered in different hospitals for antenatal. My own hospital was kind of weird. There was no signboard to show it was a hospital. It was empty. When I raised it, Kunle said it was for the super rich because he wanted the best for me and the baby. He even joked that I might meet the governor there one day. The doctors and nurses were quite nice, and that is my fear. Auntie Annie seemed to be having an easier pregnancy than I did. She didn't have pregnancy symptoms. Sometimes she even forgets that she's pregnant, and then she bends anyhow. When I pointed it out, she would say she had a flexible body. When I fell into labor, Auntie Annie and Kunle took me to the hospital where I had my baby. I must have passed out immediately I had the baby. I saw that I had a baby girl, and they said I had to rest. When I finally came to myself, a worried Kunle was seated by my side. He seemed to have been crying. When I asked for my baby, he said that there was a complication. He said Auntie Annie also went into labor and he had to rush her to the hospital that she registered in, and that when she came back, they said that my baby had breathing problems, and before they could say anything, the baby died. I told him I wanted to see my dead baby. He said it wasn't worth it, and that he had to go make arrangements for burial. He assured me that we would have other babies. He was really caring. Some days after I was discharged, he took me home and nurtured me to health. I told him I wanted to go and see Auntie Annie and her baby, but Kunle said it wasn't good for my emotional state. I agreed with him. I was just eating and sleeping for the next couple of weeks. 2 months after, he said he had to travel to finalize the divorce with his wife. I didn't want him to go, but he said it was for the best. He said it was better I stayed in my own place he had rented for me so that I wouldn't have anything that would remind me of my loss. I agreed with him. He gave me a bag of money. When I asked why I needed so much money, he said I should keep it for my need in case he doesn't come back early. He said he will call me back. He said he would come back for me. I counted the money and stopped at 1 million at that time, but it was more. Kunle called once to say that he had arrived. He said he wasn't going to use his Nigerian number and would call me with his UK line, but he never did. I tried calling Auntie Annie, but her phone was off. I realized I had no idea where Auntie Annie lived. She used to come to Kunle's house regularly. I never had any reason to visit her. I made excuses for Kunle. I believed that he would still call. While waiting for Kunle to come back, I tried to start some businesses. So since I had money at my disposal, one day I was on the market where I went to buy some stuff for the business when I met my former colleague, the receptionist. She was so excited to see me. Kunle had told me not to mix with them. He said we're not in the same social strata again, and he didn't want them disrespecting me. So I stopped talking to them at that point. While talking to this receptionist, she mentioned that Kunle had closed their office and paid them off. That sounded strange. He never mentioned that to me. The receptionist mentioned that the accountant told her that that Kunle and his wife just had a baby and they had to go back to UK. What wife? I wondered. I couldn't talk back. It was then I started thinking everything was wrong. I started to go back to his house. I figured if I could access his house, I would find a link to get Annie's number. Annie had my number, and it was all that she hadn't tried to reach me. Initially, I excused it because I felt she might be busy with her baby. But it's been 5 months and nothing. When I got to the house, I understood that it was a short-let apartment and it had a new occupier at that time. I decided to ask myself more questions. I tried to reach the accountant, and he repeated the receptionist story. Mr. Kunle and his wife just had a baby, and they have gone back to the UK. My question then was, who was his wife? How was there a wife who was pregnant if he was always with me and Annie? I needed to get more information. I didn't know where. I went to Google and saw a couple of pictures, but there wasn't any wife. I went back to the accountant, who was getting irritated by my constant questions. I asked if he knew or had a picture of Mr. Kunle's wife. He said that yes, he did in the former office, but that it was already closed down, I left it. One day I passed through the building of the hospital I used when I had my baby and decided to check on them. I thought for a minute whether they could have a picture of my late baby. So I went in. When I got there, the building was locked up. At this point, it looked as if I was going crazy. I started to shake the gate vigorously. Some of the security guys who walked around came to investigate what was happening, and I asked if they knew where the hospital that was there had moved to. They looked at me strangely and told me that there was never a hospital in that building. I started to look crazy. Now, many thoughts were going through my mind. Kule was nowhere to be found. Annie never got in touch with me. There was no hospital. Kule's house was short-let apartment. He said my baby died. I never saw the corpse. Nothing to remind me of her. It was looking like a bad dream. I looked back to all that had happened before now. Kule never transferred money to my account. He gave me cash. Was Annie ever pregnant? Was Annie today's wife? These were all questions I started asking myself. I tried to block all the thoughts away. I had money. I eventually finished counting the bag of money and realized that it was 2 million that he gave to me. It became clearer to me that he knew he wasn't coming back and has stylishly paid me off. All this happened 6 years ago. I'm an established lady now thanks to the money Kule gave me. I tried to set up a local restaurant for my mom who liked to cook recently. And while interviewing staff, Mr. Chukwuka, Kule's former cook, came for the interview. He was actually very nice to me when I was at Kunle's. When he knew I was Igbo, he would cook me delicacies he said were good for pregnant women. We would also converse in Igbo. Kunle had stumbled on us discussing before and scolded me for mixing with the staff. Kunle said that I needed to command respect. Few days later, Mr. Chukwuka was gone, replaced by a Yoruba cook. I was glad to see Mr. Chukwuka again. He asked about my baby. I told him I'd lost the baby at childbirth. He tried consoling me. I now then asked him why he left Kunle's place. He said Madam just told him he had to go, that she had another job for him. I asked him, which Madam? He said, Madam Ogakule's wife. He looked surprised. I told him I didn't know any Madam. He said that the person I used to call Auntie Annie was Oga's wife. And Mr. Chukwuka seemed confused that I didn't know. That was when it clicked. A lot of things fell into place. They used me to have a baby. My baby was with them. And I must have been very naive. A series of things were going on in my mind. Why me? Why did I have to go through all that grand scheme to get a baby off me? They had money. They would have been able to pay a surrogate or something. I'm sure if they had told me, I would have agreed because they were nice to me. Now I feel they stole from me and I'm determined to get my baby back. Do you think Adaobi should forget this baby or do you think she should look for her baby? Tell us what you think. I'll be in the comment section. Till next week when we bring you another interesting story. Bye. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share.